My name is Sabbath Kapahu. As Kathy mentioned, I'm the CEO of Invited Back, a small business where I just love to encourage leaders to reimagine, reinvent, and reinvite back to the things that matter most. I'm also a team member at Wild Leaders. I'm the executive communications lead there. I grew up in Olympia, Washington. So I'm a Pacific Northwest expat living in Hilo, Hawaii, and have had the chance to do work with a lot of incredible humans in a lot of really amazing places around the world. So I'm really thankful to share space with you all today. I want to invite us into three invitations and think about the power of an invitation. Not necessarily as just, oh, would you like to come with me to this? I think it would be an amazing opportunity for you. But I want to invite us to return, to cross over, and to reach out. And we'll understand more of what that means as we go today. I know that we are all on a journey. And we don't get to choose where that journey starts, how it starts, or when it starts. We don't get a choice in any of that. But what we do get a choice in is how we journey forward. And often I have experienced that means being invited back. So at some point, each of us receives an invitation to lead or to love or to live day by day reimagined. And when we're invited to reimagine, often the first person we have to remember to include is ourselves. So, really, today is about the power of an invitation to yourself first, and then others around you. And what I've been thinking about in this power of an invitation is that oftentimes the moments that I'm trying to avoid are the real invitations. It's an invitation to reimagine what's possible in that thing that I'm trying to avoid, to reinvent how I show up there, and then to reinvite others into a story of healing and belonging in that space. Each of us are in a season of being invited, and that looks different depending on where you've been planted or where you're serving or what you're being asked to show up in. But I want us to be open to the invitation of being invited to return, to cross over, and to reach out. My first invitation that I'll share about returning was when I was invited to return back to the South Pacific island of Palau. And it wasn't how I expected to be invited back there. We went to bury the ashes of my brother after his suicide. And to be honest, for decades, I had worked really hard to detach myself from that part of my story, of my family, of my culture, and of that past. And I thought moving on meant moving away. Even in continual patterns of my life, I thought, okay, I'm moving on, and that means moving away from this so that I can become somebody else. But in those moments, I remember it was a Monday morning. I was in a team meeting and we got the news that my brother had taken his life. So in that one heartbreaking moment, in the months that followed, and then back in Palau, which if you don't know where that is, you can look it up on a map later. If you're like looking on Google Map, you just have to zoom, because it's a tiny, tiny island in the middle of the Pacific. And in that invitation to return through grief, unexpected seeds of healing began to grow. And in this picture, you can see my mom and my dad and my niece. We all flew from Hawaii to Palau together. And that was the first time we had all been together probably in 15 years. And that was an invitation to return to this part of my life that I never imagined being invited back to. In that space, seeds of restoration and resilience and generational hope were planted. And really, there is no map for navigating those kinds of moments. They are whispers of an invitation. And then we find ourselves thinking, am I going to say yes? Through all of the XYZ that I think should be a reason not to, when we choose to say yes to returning, we plant seeds for the generations that are coming after us. I remember when I first heard the news about my brother, a friend of mine, I just so happened to have a phone call with her scheduled for like the next day. And I grew up with her. She's been with me for almost all the monumental seasons and moments of my life, but we don't get to talk very often. And I told her all the things that I was feeling in those moments. And she said, Sab, don't for a minute talk about your detachment from all the things like it was negative. You did that to survive, and you're thriving today because of it. And I couldn't see that, but she could. I was feeling all of the little girl worries about being frozen in a space and time that I was worried about what was going to happen next. And she reminded me that I'm not that little girl anymore, that I get to return strong, capable, composed, surrounded, a successful businesswoman, a wife, a mom, a friend, and a daughter. And so when we accept the invitation to return, we realize that we get to return as somebody else with a new set of skills and strengths to bring to that space. So the invitation to return. The next invitation that I want to share is the invitation to cross over or to reinvent. If you ever come to Hilo, I'll take you to Wailoa State Park. There's nothing high tech or really cutting edge about it. It's just a bunch of concrete paths. And there's benches and tables, and my kids call it the duck park because the ducks are kind enough to let us humans occupy. I mean, really, like there's ducks everywhere. But there's also a set of iconic bridges. They arch. And what I love to think about in this invitation to cross over is what a bridge allows us to do. We have to stand on one side of it. We start on one side of the bridge. And as we have the courage to consider walking over, we get to think about how that bridge allows us to cross what is uncrossable by our own two human feet. Bridges give us permission and make a way to travel and to take a risk and to get from one side to another. So we need these bridges in our lives to get us to the places that we can't get to on our own 2 feet. If you see the picture of my kids there, like that bridge is taking them to another piece of land that they couldn't get to unless they walked through the water. And what a bridge also does is it lets us go and it gives us a way back when we're ready. So we go, we experience, and then we accept the invitation back on that bridge. Well, that's the next invitation, is to cross over, to reinvent, to give permission to say, I could do something differently, but I need to cross over this bridge in order to get there. Where in our lives are we giving ourselves permission or accepting the invitation to cross over the bridge into something that we couldn't have done on our own, But if the bridge is there in front of us, it's giving us a path forward. And then the last invitation I want to offer us today is the invitation to reach out, to re-invite others on that journey that you've taken, to return to a space as a little bit different version of yourself, to cross over, to reinvent the things that you thought maybe weren't possible at one time, but they are now. And then we get to do those things with others because we weren't meant to work or lead or love alone. So the invitation to reach out, re-invite others to this new space. This is a picture of a letter that I wrote to my daughter. We have this journal that we pass back and forth of letters. We write things that she's not comfortable saying out loud, but she's comfortable writing it down on paper. I learn so much about her through these pages because if I ask her, "How was your day?" "Good." "What'd you do?" "Nothing." Maybe typical preteen. We started this journal last year and we pick it up and put it down. Sometimes there's months between the two. She brought it out and she wrote down in her journal all of these things that she was feeling so nervous about and frustrated about, and that she felt too ashamed to say out loud, but she was courageous enough to write them down on paper. And it made me think about this invitation to reach out because we really do not know what someone else is going through unless we give them an invitation into a space that maybe they wouldn't be able to say out loud. So, whatever that looks like for the people in our lives, if we become the kind of leader that invites others to a space that it's okay to reach out to, then we unlock this incredible level of knowing each other and being able to serve and do life together in ways that sometimes we're not courageous enough to say out loud, but we're courageous enough to write down or reach out in whatever way that looks like. So, what I would love for us to be invited into is to answer a few questions in the chat and then just come off mute and we can have a discussion about where these invitations are showing up in our lives. And just before we gathered, my husband told me, "Did you hear about Dolly Parton?" And I was like, "No, what happened?" And so I had to give a moment for Dolly because I think she would love this conversation. I love this quote that I saw today from her. "If you don't like the road you're walking, start paving another one." So a moment for Dolly, because if anybody knew what it was like to reimagine and reinvent and reinvite others along the journey, she sure did.